The first time she called me, her voice sounded like she didn't really need help, just someone to show up. I remember standing at her doorway, hands still cold from the rain, toolbox in one hand, trying not to stare too long when she opened the door. She wasn't what I expected. Older, yes, but not in the way people usually mean that. She had this calm around her, like she'd already lived through the loud parts of life and learned to move quieter afterward. "Fireplace has been acting up again," she said, half a smile playing at her lips. "You're brave to come out in this weather." "I've handled worse," I answered, though I hadn't. The living room was dim, warm light sliding in through the tall window. She'd thrown a shawl around her shoulders, soft gray wool that made her skin look even lighter. I caught myself looking once, twice, then forced my eyes down to the hearth. The fire was just a scatter of embers, glowing dull red. She crouched beside me as I worked, her perfume faint and clean, something like cedar, something that lingered in the air longer than it should have. "So," she said, voice quiet, almost testing, "you actually know what you're doing with these things?" "Usually," I said. "Unless they decide to misbehave." She laughed, the kind of laugh that doesn't last long but leaves warmth behind. For a while, the only sound was metal tools clinking against brick and the soft hiss of the draft. Every now and then she shifted closer to see, her knee brushing mine by accident. Maybe not accident. I didn't move. Neither did she. "You're new around here, right?" she asked. "Been a few months," I said. "Trying to save up, finish my degree. Fixing things in the meantime." Her fingers played with the edge of the shawl. "That's honest work." There was something in the way she said it, like she missed saying that to someone. Like she hadn't said it in a while. When the fire finally caught again, the sound filled the room, the sharp crack of wood, the sudden bloom of warmth. I sat back on my heels, watching the light stretch across her face. She didn't look away. "It's beautiful," she said, almost to herself. Her hand drifted toward the fire, palm open, fingers trembling slightly in the heat. I could see the reflection of the flames in her eyes, small and restless. "You were right," she said softly. "Sometimes things just need a little air." I didn't know if she was still talking about the fire. The moment hung there, quiet, too long to be casual. She turned her head, caught me watching her, and didn't look away. The air between us tightened, not uncomfortable, just full. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your heartbeat. "Coffee?" she asked finally, voice low, uncertain. "Sure," I said, even though I didn't really drink coffee this late. She stood, graceful but hesitant, like she was second-guessing the invitation even as she moved toward the kitchen. I watched her go, the curve of her shoulders, the way her hand lingered on the doorway before she disappeared. I turned back to the fire, pretending to adjust something that didn't need adjusting. The flames snapped, bright and alive, the shadows moving over the walls. Then came the sound, soft footsteps behind me again. I looked up, expecting her. But it wasn't her voice that broke the silence. Someone else had opened the front door. It wasn't her at the door. A neighbor, older man, polite, asking about the storm and whether she had candles in case the power cut again. She smiled, thanked him, and closed the door with that practiced grace of someone who's done it 1,000 times, the small smile, the gentle deflection, the way her eyes dimmed just after. When she turned back to me, she looked different. Softer, somehow lonelier. "Sorry," she said. "He checks in when it rains. Thinks I forget how to take care of myself." "You don't seem like someone who forgets much," I said. She tilted her head, almost smiling. "You'd be surprised." We sat on the couch with the coffee she'd made, too strong, too hot, and perfect for how quiet the room had become. The fire crackled. Shadows played across the rug. Every time I lifted the cup, I could feel her watching, not in a way that asked anything, but in a way that noticed everything. Her wedding ring wasn't there. I hadn't seen it the first time, but now I was sure. Still, a pale band marked where it used to be. She caught me noticing and didn't hide it. "He's in another city now," she said, voice even. "Has been for a while." I nodded. "I didn't mean to, it's fine," she said quickly, but her eyes flickered. "People leave. Sometimes that's the kindest thing they do." She tried to laugh after that, but it came out thin, fragile. I wanted to ask what she meant, but she changed the subject. You said you're still in school? Yeah. Architecture. Explains why you kept looking at the ceiling beams, she said, teasing. Most people don't notice those. I notice a lot of things, I said. That made her go still. Just a fraction of a second. Then she smiled again, this time smaller, like she wasn't sure if she wanted to. The conversation drifted: books, old houses, the rain pressing softly against the windows. I told her about the place I rented with 3 other guys, about the noise, the clutter, the way I sometimes stayed late at jobs like this just for the quiet. Quiet can be dangerous, she murmured, eyes on the fire. It lets things surface. Her shawl slipped off her shoulder then, an unremarkable thing, but I noticed the bare skin, the faint goosebumps. I reached to hand it back, fingers brushing her arm. Warm, smooth, alive. She didn't pull away right away. Instead, she looked at my hand like she was deciding something, then took the shawl, slow, her fingers grazing my wrist. You should go soon, she said finally. Before the roads flood. Yeah, I said, though neither of us moved. The rain kept falling, heavy now, hammering the roof. She turned toward me, hair catching the firelight, a strand falling across her cheek. I don't know why I reached out, maybe to move it, maybe to stop her from finishing the thought I could see forming. Her breath brushed my thumb. Neither of us spoke. For one suspended moment, it felt like the air itself leaned closer, the fire popping, the smell of rain and coffee and something else, something that shouldn't be there but was. She blinked first. You should go, she repeated, but softer, almost like she hoped I wouldn't. I nodded. Didn't stand up, the rain hadn't stopped by morning. It clung to the windows in thin silver lines, tracing the glass like veins. I came back, she hadn't called, but the power had flickered through the night, and I used that as my excuse. When she opened the door, surprise flickered through her expression, then something else, something she didn't name. You didn't have to come, she said, voice quieter than the rain behind her. I figured you might need help with the fuse box, I said. Or company. That last word slipped out too easily. Her eyes caught on it. She didn't correct me. Inside, the air was cooler, the fire long gone cold. She stood by the window, holding her phone, thumb resting on the screen without moving. I noticed the message half typed out, it's been years, but I still, and nothing else. She caught me noticing and locked the phone. Old habits, she murmured. I set my tools down, though neither of us pretended that's why I was there. Her hair was loose today, darker in the wet light. A strand stuck to her lip, and she brushed it away, fingers trembling. We stood there too far apart for comfort, too close for sense. I shouldn't have stayed so long last night, I said finally. You didn't. The silence after that stretched until it started to sound like truth. Then came the sound, a car pulling up outside, tires slicing through water. She went still, body tensing, and I caught the flicker of nerves in her throat. My sister, she said, almost under her breath. She sometimes drops by without calling. Do you want me to stay? The word came sharp, immediate. Then softer, please. Just stay quiet. She grabbed my wrist, pulling me behind the half wall near the kitchen, the warmth of her hand cutting through every reason I had to leave. I could feel her heartbeat against my sleeve, too fast, matching mine. Her sister's voice called from the front, light, casual. A door opening. Boots on the mat. In here, she called back, steady now, but her hand didn't let go. The sister stayed just long enough to borrow candles, complain about the storm, and ask who parked down the street. Electrician, she said easily, without looking my way. Just fixing things. When the door finally shut again, the quiet felt different, stretched thin, like it could tear. Her hand was still on my wrist. Neither of us noticed until then. She started, then stopped. You should go before I start making excuses. I should've. I really should've. But instead, I turned, her hand slipping but not falling away. She looked up, eyes too open, too close. I could see the small scar near her collarbone, the faint rise of her breath. My hand lifted before I thought, just enough to brush a curl from her face. Her lips parted. The air between us tightened, almost burning. But then her phone buzzed, sharp, jarring. A name lit the screen. Him. We both froze. She turned away, breathing shallow. "You should go," she whispered. I took a step back, then stopped at the door, unable to move farther. "Do you want me to?" I asked. She didn't answer. The rain answered for her, hard, relentless, drumming against the glass. And neither of us moved. The storm passed, but the air didn't cool. It just hung heavy, thick with everything unsaid. I hadn't meant to go back again, not so soon, but she texted this time. Just a few words, "The fire won't stay lit." I went. Of course I did. When she opened the door, she wasn't wearing that calm she usually wore like armor. Her hair was loose, her eyes tired, lips parted as if she'd been holding something in for hours. "The chimney's fine," I said after a glance at the hearth. "It's not the fire that's the problem." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "No. I suppose not." I set my gloves down, but didn't move closer. She stood there, barefoot on the rug, one hand on the mantel, the other tracing circles on the cool stone like she was trying to ground herself. "About the other night," she started, voice unsteady. "You don't have to explain." "I do," she said. "Because I can't stop thinking about it." That stopped me. My heartbeat filled the quiet. She looked up at me then, and there was nothing guarded in her face anymore, just a kind of tired honesty. "You make me remember what it felt like to be noticed. Not watched, not managed, just seen." Her words landed like a confession she hadn't planned to give. I stepped closer, one small step that changed everything. "You think you're the only one losing sleep over it?" Her breath caught. The space between us shrank until the heat from the fire and the warmth of her skin blurred together. "I'm too old for this," she whispered, but she didn't move. "For wanting something that can't make sense. You don't look old to me." "Don't," she said quickly, but her eyes flickered. "Don't make this sound easy. It isn't." We stood there, not breathing. The room smelled like smoke and rain-damp wool. I could see the small pulse at her throat, quick and uneven. My hand lifted before I could stop it, brushed a loose strand of hair from her face, fingers grazing the edge of her jaw. She closed her eyes. Just that, no words, no resistance. "Tell me to stop," I said quietly. She didn't. Instead, she leaned in, not enough to bridge the space, just enough that her breath touched my neck when she spoke. "You have no idea what you're doing to me." Her voice cracked on the last word, and something in me did too. I could smell the faint trace of coffee on her breath, the warmth of her so close it made my skin ache. My hand found her waist, careful, tentative. She didn't flinch. "Say something," I murmured. She opened her eyes, wet, bright, torn between fear and something far deeper. "If I do," she said, "we can't go back." "I don't want to." Her lips parted, a breath away from mine, and then, from outside, the sound of a car door slamming. A voice calling her name. We froze. She stepped back, shaking, every bit of color draining from her face. "Don't move," she whispered, eyes on the door. "Please." The knock came sharp, insistent. And in that heartbeat between fear and fire, we just stared at each other, knowing nothing would ever be the same again. It wasn't her sister at the door this time. It was him. The man from the phone, the one she hadn't named but hadn't needed to. He stood on the porch, rain dripping off his coat, eyes darting past her shoulder and landing right on me. The quiet that followed could have cracked glass. "Didn't expect company," he said finally. His voice was smooth, but too measured, the kind that only sounds calm when it's not. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "You shouldn't just show up here." "I called," he said, eyes still on me. "Guess you were busy." The word landed sharp. I started to speak, just fixing the fireplace, but she cut in too fast. "He's been helping me with repairs. That's all." Her tone was steady, but her hands weren't. I could see the tremor in her fingers, how she pressed them against the edge of the door to hide it. He laughed once, dry. Repairs. Right. The rain had started again, soft, steady, tapping against the roof. She turned, just slightly, toward me. It was small, but enough to make it clear she wanted me to stay silent. He stepped inside without asking. Still looks the same, he said, glancing around the living room like it belonged to him. You even kept the rug. I like what's familiar, she said. Yeah, he murmured. You always did. The word stung, though I didn't know why. I shouldn't have cared, but the way she looked at him, tense, guarded, old wounds showing through her calm, made something shift in my chest. He turned to me. How long have you been fixing things here? Few weeks, I said. On and off. On and off, he repeated. His eyes narrowed just slightly, and I knew he saw it, the distance between us that wasn't really distance. She stepped between us then, closer to me than she needed to. That's enough, David. The name felt heavy in the air. He looked at her, then at how close she was standing to me, her arm brushing mine, her breath catching just slightly when she realized it. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I see. When he finally left, the sound of the door closing was almost violent. She stood still for a long moment, staring at the floor. I should have told you, she said finally. You don't owe me anything. She looked up sharply. Don't say that. Not after this. The fire behind us had burned down to embers again, barely alive. Her shoulders shook, not from crying, but from restraint. He's not my husband anymore, she said. But he still checks in. He can't stand the idea that someone else might. She stopped herself, voice catching on the edge of what she wouldn't say. I stepped closer, the space between us filled with heat and history neither of us had lived but could still feel. You don't have to explain, I said softly. She looked up at me, eyes bright and angry and afraid. But I want to. Her hand came up, almost touching my chest before she caught herself. The hesitation was worse than any touch. I can't keep pretending I don't want you here, she said, low, shaking, real. The fire popped behind us, sparks jumping in the dim light. I reached for her wrist, stopping her hand before she could pull away. Then stop pretending, I said. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. And in the reflection of the dying firelight, her eyes met mine, not with fear this time, but decision. She didn't step back this time. Her hand was still caught in mine, trembling, pulse fluttering beneath my thumb. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore, it was heavy, charged, full of all the things we'd been pretending not to feel. The rain outside had stopped. The only sound left was the low hiss of the fire and our uneven breathing. Tell me to leave, I said. She looked at me, really looked. You wouldn't listen. Probably not. Her laugh came out broken, a half-breath, half-confession. She turned away, just enough to look toward the window, her reflection faint in the glass, the outline of someone who'd been strong too long. You think this is easy for me, she whispered. No, I said. I think it's real. That made her turn back. Something raw flickered in her eyes, fear, want, defiance. Real doesn't mean right. Maybe not, I said. But it's here. She exhaled, slow and shaky. Her hand slipped from mine, but only so she could touch my face, barely, the edge of her fingers tracing the line of my jaw like she was memorizing it. You're too young to understand what this costs, she said. Then teach me. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. And then there was nothing, no reason, no logic, just her eyes on mine, the small space left between us shrinking until the air itself seemed to burn. She leaned in, slow, uncertain, every movement saying this shouldn't happen, and every hesitation saying it already has. When her forehead touched mine, I could feel her breath, warm and uneven. She closed her eyes. I don't want to lose what little peace I've found, she whispered. I swallowed hard. Then don't. Just, don't lose this either. Her hand pressed against my chest, not to push me away, but to feel the rhythm there. The moment stretched, no words, just pulse and firelight and two people who had run out of reasons to keep pretending. She lifted her head, eyes glistening. "You make me forget," she said. "Maybe forgetting's the point." Her lips brushed mine, not a kiss, not yet, just the ghost of one. And in that half-second of closeness, everything shifted. The distance that had held us apart finally broke. She pulled back first, breath shaking. "If we do this," she said, "everything changes." It already has. The truth hung there, simple and devastating. She looked at me for a long time, then nodded once, small, certain. The fire cracked loud, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. She reached for my hand again, fingers steady this time. "I'm tired of being afraid," she said. And just like that, the decision was made, quiet, inevitable, human. Not a surrender. Not victory. Just two people choosing not to run anymore. The flames caught higher, shadows spilling across the room. Outside, the world was still wet and gray, but inside, for the first time, everything was clear. Morning came slow. The kind of quiet light that doesn't rush you, just filters in softly through the curtains, gentle and forgiving. The fire had burned out hours ago, leaving behind only the faint smell of smoke and the warmth that clung to the room. She was sitting on the floor near the hearth, legs tucked beneath her, a blanket around her shoulders. I joined her without a word, lowering myself beside her. Our knees brushed, a small thing, but enough. Neither of us spoke for a while. The silence wasn't heavy this time. It felt honest. "I didn't think you'd stay," she said finally, eyes still on the ashes. "I didn't think you'd let me." Her lips curved just slightly. Maybe I stopped trying to protect the wrong things. I watched her fingers play absently with the edge of the blanket, a nervous habit I'd come to recognize. "You mean what people think?" She looked at me then, steady. "People always think." I just finally realized it's not my job to make them comfortable. The simplicity of it hit harder than any confession could. She had spent years holding her breath, living carefully. And last night, she'd finally exhaled. "Last night wasn't a mistake," I said quietly. "You know that, right?" Her eyes softened. "I do. But it scared me." "Me too." We both smiled a little at that, at the strange comfort of mutual fear. Outside, the rain had stopped completely. The sky was pale and washed clean. She reached for her coffee cup, cold now, then set it down untouched. "You'll have to go back soon," she said. "Eventually." She turned toward me, eyebrow lifting. "Eventually?" "I still have to check that the fireplace holds," I said, a faint grin tugging at the corner of my mouth. That earned a laugh, quiet but real. She leaned back against the couch, the blanket slipping enough for her shoulder to brush mine. "Do you know what you're doing?" she asked. "Not really," I admitted. "But neither do you." Her hand found mine beneath the blanket. No hesitation this time. Just warmth, fingers intertwining, palms fitting in a way that felt unforced, earned. For a long while, we just sat there, listening to the crackle of the cooling logs, the birds starting outside. She leaned her head against my shoulder, breathing out like she'd finally put something down she'd been carrying too long. "Feels strange," she murmured. "Peaceful." I nodded, turning slightly so I could rest my cheek against her hair. "Feels right." We stayed like that until the light grew brighter, touching everything it could reach, the walls, the floor, the outline of our joined hands. No grand promises. No speeches. Just quiet understanding, the kind that comes after the storm, when everything that matters is still standing. She looked up once more, eyes soft but certain. "You really did fix it," she said. "The fireplace?" She smiled. "No. Me." And in that moment, I knew neither of us would need to hide from the fire again. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?